Oh, 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 oh.
Welcome to Multiple O's, the spin-off podcast for The O Show. The O Show is hosted by Dr. Oriana Fox, the artist with a PhD in self-disclosure. You hopefully know the spiel by now. If you're interested in candid confessions, creativity, nonconformity, and mental health, you've come to the right place. This, my friends, is season 2 of this podcast, which explores the crossover between working on the self and working to change the world.
Hi, folks. It's Oriana. I'm back after an unexpected hiatus. Sorry about that gap in Multiple O's programming. Even though I'm just sharing material that was recorded back in May 2021, I found it very hard to keep up, even with that, just because I've taken on a bit too much outside work away from making art and doing this podcast, which is making me a little bit burned out and also a little down because, without making art, I feel like I don't know who I am and what purpose I'm serving on this earth. That's the sad truth. I'm addicted to art. Anyway, I'm happy to be back to it now and to share with you this great interview with Daniel Oliver, which I very much enjoyed at the time, and I enjoyed re-listening to it. I enjoyed it so much that I asked Daniel to do a follow-up interview, and we spoke for 2 hours, and I think it was the idea of facing that 2 hours worth of editing that has prevented me from even sharing the original interview with you. But the good news is I did finally face it. And I'm pleased to be able to share with you both the original interview and the follow-up with Daniel Oliver. Daniel Oliver is a performance artist. He teaches live art at Queen Mary University, and I refer to him fondly as the live art poster boy for neurodiversity, as he is not shy about revealing that he has dyspraxia, and he makes a lot of work or it's just inevitably a part of his work, the fact that he's dyspraxic. He takes a lot of risks with things going wrong, and he improvises and participates with audiences in novel ways. And he's going through a midlife crisis, which entails doing a lot of board games, which is something he brought up in the original interview, and I was surprised I didn't jump on it as a topic of discussion, but we do discuss it in the follow-up interview. Without further ado, here are the best bits of the 2 interviews. Enjoy.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the O Show. Thank you so much for being here. So, how are you feeling today?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm a bit tired. I did a thing last night, and so I'm a bit juddery today, but good. Yeah, fine.
Tell me about your thing last night. That's fresh off the fresh topic.
Topic. So I've been making a sort of board game that's also a performance that's also that is about going to performance festivals and getting lost, and it's also like a dream, like a boardy dream that's also an anxiety dream, and you play it the game and then I perform some of the bits that would be the performances in the festival.
Nice. So is that kind of, have you been doing a lot of board gaming since COVID?
Yeah, I got dead into it. It's like, I think it's my midlife crisis, and I don't feel too bad about it.
How old are you that you're having a midlife crisis?
40. That's the correct age.
Oh, yes. You just turned 40. Happy birthday. I remember. It was just last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Welcome to your 40s.
Thank you.
Come on in. The water's fine. So yes, I think I've admired your work, Daniel, for a while now. And I you really, put yourself out there, and you're very kind of kooky and weird. But I also kind of think of you as, I hope it's okay to say this, as like the neurodiversity poster boy of live art.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Like,
Is that nice? I don't know if that's nice.
no,
Or
it's
not.
good.
So,
I mean, like that. I feel simultaneously really affirmed and excited, and then also like it's
pigeonholed and get
what?
away.
No, not pigeonholed. More like, well, there's loads of really like. I mean, everyone's a bit neurodivergent in live art, and also,
Actually, I was thinking that.
yeah, and I guess like, I think I was really lucky because I basically managed to get. I was finding out what neurodiversity was and dealing with my own discovery of being dyspraxic and stuff. And I sort of did the research on what that means, like publicly. So that meant that I guess I kind of got I got that position through basically. I don't know what this stuff is, and I'm in a lucky position where I can get funded to run some workshops and publicly facing kind of stuff that where I figure that out. So, and I guess that's often how I work, like to figure stuff out in front of people.
Are you hearing the traffic go by? I'm realizing now I should have shut the window. Oh, good. You're not hearing that. Okay, just checking. Sorry, it's completely distracting me now. And so speaking of being neurodivergent, I've never been tested. Maybe I am because I'm clearly having an inability to focus. So, yeah, I mean, I think our world obviously is really catered to, able-bodied, able-mindedness is really ableist, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I know you're doing a lot of great work to, enable conversations around, kind of embracing neurodiversity and, doing work around that topic. And as you mentioned, like, you're dyspraxic, and I'm just wondering how did you discover that and about yourself and. Yeah.
So I was, so I was officially diagnosed when I was 30, I think, or 29. So I was doing my MA and at Queen Mary in the drama department, and someone there, when they were like marking my writing, said they reckon I might be dyspraxic because of the structuring of the thinking and stuff. So then I went for a test, like you do. And they got the thumbs up sort of thing. But also my understanding from my parents is that it was something that was like lightly talked about right back from when I was very, very little, but not really, there wasn't enough sort of stuff going on that was taken up on. And I think, so it's, I've definitely known I'm like a bit slow and a bit clumsy and a bit disorganized always. And then I learned that there was a thing called dyspraxia, and I sort of quietly kind of connected with that. So that when the tutor on my MA said you should get a test, and then when I got that, yes, that was. It felt like just someone going like, yeah, the thing that you thought was going on is going on.
So it was kind of affirming, but did you feel like how did your well, obviously you're already an adult, so it's not like your parents kind of had a sense that maybe
I think that it was mentioned to them by a nurse or something, like when I was very, very little, that there was some sort of signs there, but it was less known about then. And I think it was and I guess I think I did also was encouraged to do lots of things that kind of help, like so like different activities and stuff that meant it was not the visible parts of dyspraxia, like the clumsiness and stuff, were maybe less apparent. Yeah.
So, and you've gone on to edit a book called Offwoods, and it's a great compilation of writing about neurodiversity and performance. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit about your work and how you how your dyspraxia kind of informs your practice.
Yeah, so I mean, so the work, I guess it probably. So I make performances that have audience participants, so people get involved, and so there is a kind of live, spontaneous thing. There's often lots of different like plate spinning, which inevitably lead to some kind of collapse in some way, which I try and make a fun collapse. And so there's a sort of way of making shows that sometimes work in like intention with me being dyspraxic in terms of trying to manage everything, and then try and make that an affirming and positive experience for everyone rather than a frustrating one. But I've made work like that for a long time before I was dyspraxic. So I think when I was younger, in my early 20s, I just sort of thought I wanted to be like a punk and like a live artist in the way that I understood live art to be like punky and like a bit like that, you know. And so the kind of clumsiness and the kind of chaos, and also like we would when I was an undergraduate, like all this kind of like deconstruction, post-structuralist stuff was really trendy as well. So like not quite committing to stuff and it being like lots of different things going on and the kind of all that stuff and it taking things apart, taking theatre apart or taking performance apart. I thought I was like a sort of punky post-structuralist or something for a long time. And I worked with someone who also, we made work together who sort of, we really, really resisted. Also because a lot of people around us were making pretty heavy issue-based stuff. And it felt like that was like the demand in a way. And we wanted to resist that. So we were kind of, any suggestion that there was something like autobiographical or like neurological or like whatever in there we would have absolutely refused because we were young. And
who is this that you're speaking about?
So this is me and Luke Ferris. And so, yeah, we were pretty, you know, we were young and a bit kind of annoying and you know, but then I guess when I found out that I was dyspraxic for sure, and also I was and then I was about to start a PhD writing about awkwardness and was kind of encouraged more, especially actually right at the end of my Viva, to foreground dyspraxia more in that and the relationship between awkwardness and dyspraxia. So I was kind of encouraged to do that, and I began to be more open to naming that in my work. And my collaborator was also, turns out, is dyspraxic, which we never talked about before. So then we could talk more about that, and we were again more kind of giving ourselves permission to like let that be a word that comes up in blurbs and stuff. So it feels
that's really interesting. Yeah. So it's like because of your PhD that you were kind of encouraged to make more identity based or dyspraxic.
Yeah, I think
kind of
to be honest, I think
work.
I mean the work. I don't think the work itself has really changed much. Hopefully, it's got a bit better. But in terms of how that comes about, and you know, if you're actually being in the room with me in the performance, but it's more the contextualizing stuff, like the way that it's marketed or the way that it's talked about in afterwards or the way that it's written about, is more open to making that a kind of strand of how you might read it. But still hopefully a strand amongst many other strands.
Yeah. So how does it work, like with the combination of sort of pre-planned elements and unplanned, you know, spontaneity? Like do you feel like you can ensure some kind of result, or is it about like not having a kind of, obviously when you're doing unplanned stuff, you don't know. I mean, is that the pleasure of it, or do you ever feel anxious about the fact that, you know, there's this combination of stuff that you don't necessarily have control over?
I think I usually have things pretty well worked out in my head beforehand, and then I've tried out things that like would be like more annoying to go wrong. So things that like need to have a kind of technical ability or a kind of, you know, like it's not funny or interesting for it to go wrong. So there's this kind of like, there's a security in that. And then in my head, I really know what's going to happen in the show. It's just that thing in my head doesn't really match what then happens when I'm in the space. So there's a kind of trick in a way of going like, yeah, I just got it sorted. Just go in that room and do that stuff. And sort of pretending that I don't know that I'm going to get other people involved and me and them together are probably going to ruin it. And then by now, both having a practice of like ruining stuff in a funny, hopefully funny way, knowing that audiences don't know what was planned and what wasn't, and also having like on several occasions it gone really horribly wrong, and the worst thing that happens is like you're on your own in a room full of people who hate you, and it's not that bad. Like once you've done it a couple, you're like, it's horrible, but there's a lot worse things. And having that kind of confidence, not confidence, but having that feeling of like, okay, what's the bottom line horror here? That everyone goes like, it's awkward afterwards, and people are like, oh, and then they don't talk about it. You know, they don't talk about the show. They just ask you how your kids are or whatever.
That is just so perfect what you just said. Everything you just said, it's just, yes, because that's, it relates exactly to kind of the research I did for my PhD, if we're going to talk about PhDs, which was all about shame attacking. And it's this therapeutic practice, which is part of rational emotive behavior therapy. And it's called shame attacking, and you kind of just you go out and do things that might be weird, like take a banana for a walk, but you realize that, you know, people might think you're strange, or you do the thing that you fear that would get the response that you fear getting, and then you realize actually it's not that bad, and then the idea within the therapeutic practice is that it gives you confidence. But I think it doesn't only give you confidence, it also allows you to kind of break with norms and kind of critique norms. So in your case, kind of the norms of performance practice or whatever. And also just a way of being in the world, like this awkwardness or this weirdness, this uniqueness that you have.
Yeah. I guess like one of the things that I guess I try to avoid is like just making people feel all right with stuff. Like I want people to, I like it when there's feelings like a bit of anxiety and a bit of awkwardness. And I like it when people are like euphoric, but I'm not like, although it often happens, for example, I'm quite often don't have clothes on in my work, and people are like, oh, it was just fine. I'm like, I don't want to be described naked as just fine. Like, I want it to be like, oh my God, Daniel, what did you do? Or I want it to be like, that was amazing. It felt so freeing, and we're never going to wear clothes anymore. But I think a lot of people, when they talk about like neurodiversity, like they want everyone to be all right with it. And I want people to either be like weirded out by it or to be like, this is amazing, you know? So I guess that's where that, yeah.
I think that's great what you just said, because I was talking about what doing that kind of work does for the practitioner, but what you're talking about is what it does for others, which is what obviously performance is about. It's not just about like, I'm doing this thing so I can have the therapy. It's like, I'm doing this thing because I want to have an impact on the world around me and the audience. So you want the audience to have these, you know, quite, I don't know, intense reactions, not just be like blasé, like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because that's doing something, right? It's more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have there been like particular works that you felt were more like, why is it that in some cases people would be like, oh, you were naked and that's fine, as you said, like, versus you were naked and I want to go out and run naked, or, you know, like, have there been different, like, or maybe it's down to the individuals watching, or do you think it's something about your work that you could craft to get those different reactions?
Yeah, I find it really hard to know. And I guess, yeah, so it does feel really unexpected. Like, I think that's one of the thrills of it, is still that, like, you don't, not only with like being naked, but whatever it is that you do, that you know, it's not about shock, but it's about like a sense of like a slight anxiety of like, where's this going to go? With fun, and a slight sense of wildness that, like, I'm not quite sure that he's in control here. Again, with all the kind of caveats of me being an all right person and not doing horrible things to people, but like that. So that and going in and knowing that at some point you're going to do this thing, and you don't know whether people are going to do how they're going to react is really nice. And I think that's what it is for me. So yeah, so when it's surprising, that's what I like, to be surprised by how people respond rather than try and like really control it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. But I want to know more about this idea of like, you don't want the reaction to neurodiversity to be that people are okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like, yeah, I mean, I do, of course, that like, just to revisit what I said there, which is like, you know, like I think I'm talking about the specific context of my performances, and obviously there is a journey of like relationship to any kind of otherness that we have to go through, you know. But you know, I mean, there's those kind of corny phrases like "I want to go where I'm celebrated, not just tolerated," and that sort of thing. And I do feel that, like, I think, and there might be a journey from one to the other, but I think that, yeah, and I guess like I don't think I've ever had any pressure from like parents or anything like that to like be like normal, have a normal job and do normal stuff. I feel really lucky about that, and I think therefore this idea that like I'd be accepted in those worlds is not that interesting to me really. Like I think I feel resistant to those worlds, and therefore if they have a slightly antagonistic relationship with the way I do things, that's a bit affirming. Maybe it gets harder now with having kids and stuff and doing like pet drop off at school and, you know, having to have conversations about what I do and stuff. But like,
yeah, how does that go? How does that go with, you know, at the PTA? No, not the.
Exactly,
we don't really. I don't know if you're part of your school even has one, but anyway, or if you would want to be part of that.
No, I mean, yeah, but like, I mean, also like I can, you know, it's just, people are busy with their own lives, aren't they? So it's usually like either people just kind of shut off in the way that they do when you tell them about any job you do, or like on rare occasions people suddenly get really interested in, you know, like people come with me to watch stuff. It's really nice. So yeah, I realise I keep answering your questions and then undoing what I just said in my answer to your next question, which is just so everyone knows I'm aware of that I'm doing that.
That's good to be self-aware.
Yeah.
Let's hear it for self-awareness. So you brought up the fact that you're often nude and the different reactions you want to. I don't know. I'm saying nude like it's art history. Naked. What makes you feel so kind of at ease being naked, like in front of strangers?
I don't know. It's funny that, isn't it? Like, I don't know if at ease is the right. If whether I am.
Maybe you're not at ease. Yeah.
No, I think. I mean, it's. I find it. I guess I find it funny, and like thrilling in the kind of like in all the kind of probably cliche ways of like why someone would streak. You know, there's just that sense of like, you know, it's like streaking rather than flashing, right? Which I think they're different things. And like a streaker's thrill is like just the feeling of freedom and kind of. And being like naughty in a way rather than a sort of abusive kind of thing of being a flasher. And I think I like the strange rules around what being a performer or being an artist like legitimizes you to do. So I like the fact that we've all agreed that something is okay that in other scenarios might not be okay, and I find that exciting. And weird, and I can't work it out because I think that's a dyspraxic thing. Like rules are important, understanding the rules and the implicit rules are important. But in that space, I know to a certain extent the rules are kind of my rules, and so things like not having clothes on at some point is suddenly experienced in a different way than it would in another context. But I don't know. Yeah, so I think I've done it enough times that I'm all right with it. There are still moments where it's not all right, and those are usually moments where I notice that someone's having a hard time, not necessarily with the nudity, but like being naked and people not having a very interesting time. It's a horrible experience. So there's like
that
suddenly,
doesn't sound fun.
You know, so when you suddenly like, you feel really vulnerable, and because the piece is going horrible, and you've not got clothes on, that can be upsetting, or like that can leave me like the next day I'll go like, oh, you know, like a hangover. Really, it's like, oh god. That was horrible.
Yeah, the shame hangover. But how do you get over that when that happmes?
I think just like any hangover, really, just know it will pass.
Hair of the dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. don't know. I think it's just knowing that it'll go away. I think that's the only thing I can think of. Like, sometimes you're just busy, so you got to get on with stuff.
This too shall pass kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it does. And then go to the next thing, I guess.
Also, just maybe one last question, because I don't know how much. We don't have much time left. But I'm just wondering. I know when you work with other or I've heard you speak about working with large groups of neurodiverse people or people with different abilities or whatever, and the potential for setting each other off or like triggering one another is kind of tricky to manage, and it's kind of how do you manage that, or do you invite that kind of thing, or if you could talk a little bit about that, because I know you've done long tables, following the model of Lois Weaver.
So I think in terms of I think it's important to clarify that the sort of awkwardness I'm interested in is not really one of like interpersonal conflict. So I think that I take no pleasure in seeing a kind of, when I'm not curious or interested in like two people's like neurodivergencies causing an unpleasant tension for them, or like the outcome,
Of course, that would be antithetical, I think, to Lois Weaver's model.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's sort of like it can be inevitable, maybe, or worryingly.
Exactly. So I think there's an awareness. I've learned that, it's complicated because people are just people, and then there's like, we create a space where we say you can come and you can be neurodivergent, and then you find yourself in a position where maybe you should go, actually, can you tone that down because it's upsetting this person or whatever. So it is a complicated role. I think the thing I love about the long tables and actually like lots of things is that it's like less work is better, and you don't have to do too much. I think people are all right; they resolve things themselves, and I think that's like, in a way, I think especially as academics and as like teachers and stuff, we feel that we're not being a good person if we're not constantly working to like manage the situation. And that people will think bad of us because we're not like going, okay, you just need to calm down, and can we email from you and all that stuff. And actually, if you stop doing that, things just generally, or in almost every situation I can think of, resolve themselves, and it's in a much better way. So it is just about the discipline of like being quiet, really, even though you're taking responsibility and being the person where the buck stops, whilst also knowing that you don't have to like constantly micromanage everyone's behavior, which is a hard thing. I'm still learning what that means, but that's what it feels like.
So it is tricky. It is tricky, isn't it? Like being a facilitator, but also knowing that you kind of have to let people be responsible for themselves to a certain extent, and managing that balance is really tricky, I think, because people are looking to you to facilitate and lead and draw the line or whatever it is, or
exactly. So that there are certainly times where I've had to draw the line, I guess. But also, I think the great thing with the long table is I'm also just another person then in the room who would like call something out that was a problem, just like anyone else would, hopefully. So that's it. Doesn't mean like avoiding, doesn't mean like letting really like toxic or problematic or language or kind of posturing or whatever. Not letting people get away with that, because you're just another person in the room who can say like, whoa, maybe take a seat back or whatever. But it's not the same as the kind of like positioning yourself in like an expert of relationality or something like that, where you're able to somehow be outside of the situation and go, okay, what needs to happen here, everyone, is that I think is what you want to try and resist. I think
that's super useful.
For me, I found
yeah, no, that I think that's super useful.
like letting my there's something about like looking like you're constantly laboring when you're facilitating stuff because of a sort of certain field of like work ethic and guilt and whatever. It's not useful. Sometimes it's good to like back off. That's I don't know. Seems to be all right, you know.
It's been great talking to you, and I feel like we could probably go on for forever. What else would be really important to say? You collaborated with loads of people, and I don't know if you want to say something about that kind of dynamic of wanting to be part of other people's work, like as a sort of, I don't know, sidekick. I don't know if that's the right word, or share, or do you want to be the, do you want to invite people in, or do you do a combination of those two, or who leads?
So so I've been sidekick is such a good word. I've not thought of it in that way, but been working a lot with the artist Matthew Deckerson Girodo as his sidekick, I guess. So he's a visual artist, but he writes performances that I perform for him, and I've sort of pretended to be him in the past and done various things. And he gives me a fair amount of freedom to kind of tweak writing, or sometimes just some loose instructions to follow. And that's been really nice. And that feels like being a performer for someone else, but having some agency and kind of creative input. And then, I think, I don't know. I'm yet to like work, like do my own work, but employ people to like perform with and for me, which is something I really want to do soon, because it's, I've been making.
I feel like maybe we envy each other, because it's like I want to be a sidekick within somebody else's thing, and I run my thing and invite people in, and I really would like it to be, like I'd really like to be more flexible, I guess. I'd like to be people to feel like they could invite me to be part of their thing, or I don't know, or have them, or I long for collaboration, but I don't think I'm very good at it. But anyway, so
yeah,
maybe it's just that you're good at it, and that's why you end up doing that.
So I guess like there's levels of like collaboration, and I think that I invite an audience member in, and they have a certain amount of agency of like how they impact on the work, or especially the sensibilities, or like some people would argue they don't have any, and maybe that's the case, but like certainly that's a kind of a micro collaboration in a way. And then there's like the next step from that is like, say someone's been helping me build stuff all day, and I might just go, oh, do you want to be in it? I need someone just to like carry this stuff across the stage on this point, and make sure this audience member understands this thing. And I quite like that, again, because it's would have to be someone that is confident with that, and obviously, but I like that because I don't know what they're going to do in the same way as an audience participant's going to do. So without, again, like not micromanaging their kind of involvement, but just going like, I just need someone to like sit there, and then when I talk to you, just talk with me a bit, and then like carry this tarp over there. Is that all right? Yeah. And then there's like, so I guess, and that might mean like and then it might get to the next thing of like someone spending half a day with me and just mucking about with stuff. But I don't really, I either have like my real long-term collaborators like Luke, where we make the stuff up together right from the beginning, or these like really fleeting kind of moments of, well, I guess I'm in charge, but given a lot of freedom.
Great. Well, I look forward to seeing more of your work as it develops. Do you have anything in the pipeline that you want to plug while we're here?
Not really. I mean, I'm doing this board game performance again tonight, but it's sold out. It's only for 10 people. So.
Sold out already. Go home.
Sold out. I sold out the whole of Cambridge Junction, which in reality means 10 people on Zoom.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And
10 people is great.
Exactly.
Not 10 people.
But yeah, maybe like keep an eye out for how that develops. Tell the Arts Council to give me money to make it real. if you know them. And thanks so much. That was, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, give it up for Daniel Oliver.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And yeah, keep me posted. Put me on your mailing list.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Now, for the follow-up interview, I just wanted to start by asking you to explain a particular work of yours to help clarify your practice to listeners who may not be familiar with it. So could you tell me perhaps like what's a work that you think is particularly representative, or like if there's one work that you think you want to be remembered for, what would it be? And what happens in it?
I guess the piece of work that I've done most and that I enjoy doing is called Weird Seance. I think it's quite funny, and I guess like I try and make work that's funny. So basically, the way that it's a performance about a fictional performance, another performance in which everyone had died, and that fictional performance is never really described. Then there's kind of just like hints at what happened, and that it probably involved me. And so the premise is the work takes place in the woods, in the middle of a forest. And and that forest, what that is in reality, is usually a black box studio or theatre or whatever, and lots of sticks which the audience can hold, and some and then like imagination, like me telling people or finding ways of placing people in that world. So together we create this kind of this forest, and the forest is on the same land as the venue at which I'm performing. So the idea is that there used to be a venue here, there used to be a theatre here, but this terrible thing happened, and that destroyed that theatre, that just potentially kind of destroyed everything, and that this kind of forest has grown up in its place, and that's where we are now. And we come together to kind of remember the people that died in that performance. And I carry an axe all the way through, and it's kind of implied that maybe the axe was involved in this mass death. So the audience are like, often they are just themselves, but they're referred to as if they're dead. They're like the ghosts of the people from that time, apart from 2 audience members who are 2 survivors. So it's like almost like a reunion. It's framed as like a reunion, like me and let's say Tom and Sally from the audience. Like we found ourselves together in this woods, which happens to be the place where this terrible thing happened for all of us. They lost people that were close to them, people that they'd come with that day, and then over the course of the performance, we kind of reminisce about what happened, and we work towards this seance, this moment in which I will contact the people that they lost. And obviously, and the way the kind of way that works is that obviously the people that they lost are just the people that are actually there in the room. So if it's like, hi, Sally, how are you? Who did you come with? Oh, this is my friend, John. Oh, how do you know John? Oh, John, he's my housemate, blah, blah, blah. And by the end of the performance, John will be usually on the floor, kind of covered in like a poncho, kind of covered in fake blood, and I will be like talking to him as if he's like a long way away in the ether, even though he's just next to me. So like, Tom, are you there? I'm here with Sally. She was your housemate, and that sort of thing. And so that's the kind of that's the crux of the show. There's a band in it, and it kind of, yeah, it's although it's funny, it also can get quite tense. It has moments of like pretend violence, and it culminates in a kind of in a kind of ritual which involves like I'm naked and there's sort of fake blood everywhere and there's sort of shouting, and there's been an invitation for audience members to also be naked, but it's kind of a half jokey kind of thing that usually fails, and that's part of the fun. And it's kind of like this kind of moment of like, it builds towards a moment of like mystery and ecstasy that most of the time kind of flops, fails, and it's just, and then the piece kind of withers away at the end. I need to have an elevator pitch for that. That's better than like. And also, like, yeah, I just think I'm not very good at talking about it because as soon as I start to describe what it is, my brain keeps going like, yeah, but it's not just that. Yeah, so that's the story of it. But it's like there's like dancing in it. Like it's lots of like moments of like encouraging people to join in, creating a kind of communal feel. Then that becoming potentially awkward or funny or collapsing, and then kind of rebuilding it up again. That's the kind of flow of I guess that's what I'm interested in, is these kind of like the promise of participation and playing around with the kind of the way that we all ignore the fact that almost all, as Dominic Johnson said to me the other day, almost all participatory performance is like deeply manipulative. Maybe even especially the like fun, convivial, saving the world, let's all be in a community kind. And so I think I have a kind of like complicated relationship with that idea. Like I think that like there is an aim for it not to be manipulative, but there's also like an openness and an honesty, and I think ideally a kind of transparency around the manipulative elements of it, which allows it to be fun in a particular way, I think, which hopefully fosters a kind of cynicism. I think my ideal thing is that, you know, everyone's involved and having a kind of good, awkward time whilst having a kind of slight cynicism around whether they should be doing that.
And do people sometimes like refuse or to participate, or do some people get really into it and do take their clothes off when invited to, or? Yeah,
so refusal is like, although I say it's manipulative, like there's no, like, no one is forced into it's not in any way, like consent is there, or it is invitational. And I think from a distance, it can probably look a lot more, that people get swept up in it, or it could look maybe a lot more difficult to resist than it really is. But actually on the ground within it, like I'm not interested in anyone coming into it who doesn't want to be. For me, the best kind of participant is someone who it's a bit like someone that like goes on the roller coaster and has a good time, even though all day they've been going like, there's no way I'm getting on the roller coaster. Like, and then is very pleased that they got on the roller coaster. And always wanted to go on the roller coaster. So like, this all sounds like far more. Yeah, you see, I'm doing it again. I'm saying stuff. I'm like, that's not it. That sounds dodgy. Because who am I to say whether someone wants to get on a roller coaster or not? But that's been really nice feedback in the work. Is people say, I really wasn't. That was such a great experience for me because like I went for it, I jumped in, I dared to do it, kind of thing, and that's for me really exciting, more than either someone who's just like, yeah, sure, let's do it, or someone who is like, it's really clear that they hate it, or they're having a bad time, and so it's important that people are like stood around the edge in that way, rather than being seated in like a rake or just seated at all.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy just to step back into the audience and sort of disappear. And it's very clear, you can just like, it's quite easy to like step back. It's not like you've chosen to sit at the front and now you're being like picked on, this idea of being picked on or whatever. It's like, I'm not interested in that at all. Like you find yourself stood at the front, you see that something's going on and you can very easily like wiggle to the back.
You mentioned there's a band.
Yes, so it's there's a band, and the band for a long time it was a band called the Snapped Ankles, who have now like made it, if that's the right word. I can't afford them anymore. They've got no time. They're like touring the world and stuff.
I see.
And so, but always built into the show. There's like a real there's different ways that I need to get myself into a kind of state of like kind of happy panic for the show to go well. And one of them is that like often the band, I'll just meet them on the day of the performance. So if Snapped Ankles can't make it, or nowadays it will be like either it's been like, yeah, like I asked the venue, or do you know like a local band that be into it? And I send them some really basic instructions, like I want you to have 4 songs you can't sing, and like one needs to be sad, one needs to be like dance, you can dance to it, and one needs to be like ritualistic, and like really vague instructions, and then I have to cope with whatever they bring. And I like that, and I like meeting them that day and figuring it out together. The last one I worked with an amazing folk violinist called Steve Blake, who I've worked with before a few times. But yeah, so there's that element to it as well.
What kinds of like emotions happen? You said that there's like, I mean, if everyone is dead, is it sad?
Yeah, there is the potential for things to get quite sad and serious, or for you to really think about loss. And so there's a moment where, you know, the audience member is asked to speak to the person they've brought with them, whoever that is, as if they are dead and they have one more chance to say something. But and that moment happens in a moment of like raucous, silly humour, and it gets kind of played around with, and I think it still has the potential to be quite sad. So yeah, I really believe in like frivolity and like silliness as like a route to like seriousness, and I think that I've had really nice feedback before where people have talked about like it actually being a space of quite sad or difficult feelings, but it's all kind of framed in this like we're just mucking about, I'm just mucking about. So I think for me probably the primary like feeling of it is like, oh yeah, good one. Like that's the sort of like that's the feeling I imagine that people have, like that, you know, like and then like, you know, or like really laughing in a kind of way and being slightly shocked, and then like a feeling of like, no, that sort of feeling. Like, no, what, really? Oh my God, would you like believe it? That sort of feeling. But then, and then amongst all that, occasionally like, oh, that is actually quite horrible. Or like, oh, like he's really actually quite vulnerable. That there is something like desperate here, or fragile, or sad amongst all that. Like the screaming is real. Like I do like shout and scream over and over. I'm changing, and it's kind of desperate and it's exhausting. And at the same time, it's a really stupid gag because I'm just saying I'm changing whilst taking my clothes off, which is like.
And so I know you've performed this in multiple places and contexts, and I'm just wondering, how does the reaction from different audiences differ?
There's something about like rubbishness, the rubbishness of it, and the patheticness of it, that does feel like goes down particularly well, not particularly well, that feels like readable as like, yeah, this is part of our cultural heritage of like the work that kind of is about being a bit rubbish and doing something in a bit of a rubbish way. Whereas like when I did it in Zurich, like everyone took it really seriously, and someone was like crying at the end and saying like, oh, really, wow, thank you, which is lovely. And also not wrong, you know, like not wrong, but
but just different.
Yeah, different. Yeah. So yeah, like self-deprecation sort of thing, and allowing things to break and fall apart in a way that I think with my work is also can be difficult even for people here, you know, anywhere really, because it does sometimes get to a point where it's like a bit undignified or like, yeah, where something else, where there is always a risk that it slips into like, this just isn't very good. and I guess I'm not like, I'm open to that risk. And for me, the only way that the work can continue is if occasionally that happens, not too often, but occasionally that happens, and that I get really punk and stupid about it. Where I'm like, oh, fuck you then. Like, it's not very good.
Yeah. I was going to say, you mentioned that in the first interview, you said about kind of being young and wanting to be punk or something. And I was just wondering, like, how does that marry up with, like, getting a PhD?
I don't think it does. Yeah,
Is that
I don't
an
think
annoying
it does.
question? Sorry.
No, it's not. It's like, no, I mean, it's a painful question because I think I'm sat here in my office at Queen Mary where I work. I'm a lecturer. Yeah, I don't know. I think, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I can tell you the things that are going on in my head. I can tell you the things I don't want to say. I don't want to say, yeah, but it's not a very good PhD. Because, there's lots of reasons why someone would look at me in my life, and especially at the moment, and not really feel like they'd be like, where's that? Like, and so, like, in a way, like, the only thing I can, like, cling on to is that, like, the performance is, hopefully, the elements of the performance are still somewhat DIY and accessible. Like, there's a kind of 3 chords kind of attitude, I think. Like, all you need is some sticks and some gaffer tape and the ability to, like, be undignified and shout a lot. And then you just have a practice, and so that, and that occasionally still, there is a risk that will slip into something quite undignified, and that will be like a teenager about it, like whatever sort of thing. That's the only, and then like, you know, I live in a nice house with my wife and 2 kids, and have a job at university and have a PhD and stuff. Like, but, you know, I'm having a crisis about this. This is why, like, it's a hard question.
I was leaning to asking you more about the midlife crisis, because I'm just curious about your midlife crisis. I was like, why didn't I ask about the midlife crisis? I'm really interested in midlife crises.
So, you know, there was a moment of being like a younger teenager, when I was definitely into things that I think you would define as being like dorky. Like, I was into like Warhammer or like a little bit, not very much. Couldn't really afford it, but or like, you know, like fantasy, reading fantasy novels and sci-fi, and, you know, getting paranormal magazines and stuff. And that felt like it then led into like liking things like Marilyn Manson or like bad alternative countercultural stuff. Not even really, you know. And I guess that's part of the board game thing. Does feel like me going like, yeah, what was wrong with that? Like, what happened to that? You know, in the way that someone else might buy a Porsche because they'd always wanted to have a Porsche or whatever, like, or get an earring. That felt like, yeah, I'm just going to be a dork. Like, this potential to be a dork, that I neglected, and doing that with my kids as well. Basically, the cliche of the midlife crisis is like, you know, this lost thread.
Right.
And one of them is definitely this kind of fantasy dorky thing, board games like that, like, and that world as well, and the kind of people that populate that world that I really enjoy being around, and feeling like I am one. And I guess the strange thing about the midlife crisis thing is like the amount I feel so lucky, because so often actually I also find myself in situations where I'm like, oh my God, the 17-year-old version of myself would be so proud. So that's lucky, I think. And I guess and then the idea of losing that is so frightening, like or disheartening, that there are these kind of worlds that I feel I'm part of, that I imagined I might hopefully be able to be part of one day when I was a teenager. But then also how that comes in, how those worlds, yeah, like come into conflict with the things like, you know, having a family and a house and PhD and stuff.
But I guess I don't really understand what that world is. Like, what is that world?
So, a world in which people like want to make weird performances, and they want to like prioritize that. Yeah, I remember like there's just like it's really like creeps up on me. Like there's a thing that like that Phoebe Petty-Ferguson organised with Nicole at VFD years ago, where they invited me to play and like make a band quick and play at it. And it was like things like that where I was just like, God, this is like exactly the sort of thing that I would hope that I was doing now.
But you've done them
with these kinds of, yeah, no, exactly, yeah.
So you're living the dream.
Now,
so what is there to have a midlife crisis
so exactly,
about?
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm living, yeah, exactly. Where is the midlife crisis? Midlife crisis, yeah, exactly. There's still a sense of like not fully committing somehow, like I'm not like living in a warehouse on my own or like in a commune like with these people all the time,
right?
Doing this stuff all the time, like
yeah.
So there's a sense of like, but there is a sense of like slight. I don't know.
Is it like because you have the day job, the teaching position, and you're not? Is that taking away time from pursuing the dream, or like because you got to pay the bills, you gotta? Is that what you mean?
Do you know what I think? I don't know if midlife crisis, my way I think about midlife crisis, can really be attached to a specific thing. It's more of a feeling. Because whenever I try and attach it to something, it like falls apart at the argument. Like, oh no, actually, I am just doing that, or like, well, no, I also kind of wanted to be an academic, or so that these things don't really stand up. It's just, I think, a sense of like of getting old, and not being like cool anymore. Not that I was ever cool, like, but like
right.
So whether I like not being one of the. Not being relevant, not being.
I know exactly what you mean because I feel that.
And so that's why like I went on a big ramble then about like there's moments where like it's like the opposite of midlife crisis are definitely still happen. I feel very lucky about that. There are moments where I'm like, oh my God, this is like I am my own hero, in this moment. Like, I am the hero. Like I am cool for me like 30 years ago or whatever. 25 or whatever. And it's about the commitment. It's about, me and sort of friends of mine that are my age that are still doing something which is like a little bit, doesn't make much money and there's something about going like, why are we committing so heavily to a decision we made when we were like 17, like about what was worth doing? That's like that my judge is still the 17-year-old version of myself. Like I both like what it's like I can go like, is this what you meant? Yeah, oh good, yeah, I'm still doing it like that, like.
I think I think I understand what you're saying, but I think it's just like maybe I don't know if natural is the right word for it, but it just seems to be something that happens when people are like around the age of 40, and like there's like just a kind of sense of maybe evaluating like, is this where I thought I would be now as I go to the next half of
yeah, exactly. And then and then there's a sort of yes.
But I never pinned it on an age. Like, it's just interesting that you pin it on my 17-year-old self imagined my future, and I'm still judging myself by my 17-year-old standards. Like, I'm trying to think if I'm judging myself by my 17-year-old standards.
Yeah, I think there's like different. There's different threads here. Like the board game thing is something slightly different. The board game thing is like I see that I call that a midlife crisis because like. No one around me is interested in it. like my wife like rolls her eyes or like it feels like very like cliche. It feels like very, very cliche. Like if there's an episode of like a sitcom about a midlife crisis, like all the elements feel like they're there in terms of like a sort of disapproving but also like tolerating partner and being a certain age and a slight like. Well, no, I'm doing it. I just want it. So I'm going to do it. I want another board game. I want another board game that if I was to tell anyone about this board game in certain contexts, they'd be like, I don't know you anymore. Because it's like so dorky. And then having a feeling of like, well, screw them. And I imagine that might be the same feeling that accompanies like getting your ears pierced for the first time ever as a, or as a 40-year-old, or like getting a Porsche, or like, or maybe even like getting a younger part, having an affair even. That like, there's this like, I don't care if people disapprove, I need this for myself. But I'm not doing any of those things. I'm like getting...
You're just made a piece about
I bought a lot of board games and forced my kids to play, and play them and play board games on my own. So I made a show about a board game. I made a show. So I made a board game that was also about. It takes place at a performance art festival. So it's not just about wanting to play board games. It's also about like really missing, like I say, like that place where I feel one version of me really gets to come out in a way that is necessary for my well-being, which is the kind of performance art festival. So it's like creating my own version of one of those that you can play it and go to at home through this game. And so the game exists like that, and you can see I've written performances that happen in the game. So it's a bit like a cross between like a really simple like roll a dice and move game like Snakes and Ladders, and then like like an RPG, or like a kind of almost like a sort of Dungeons and Dragons like adjacent thing, where it's like there's a games master that does stuff. So it's like, then you walk into this room and there's a queue and you join the queue and there's and you get into the space in front of house person says this, and then you see this performance, and it gives me a chance to enact those performances and write those performances. And that.
So what's RPG?
Role play game. Yeah. Oh. So like it will be a game in the same way that like Weird Seances.
Participatory.
Yeah, it won't be like in the same way that like the show Weird Seances is a seance. It's not really a seance. Like, but this is the invitation of this is like, come and play this game. It's much better than I make it sound.
Well, I'm looking forward to experiencing it.
I was trying to explain my work. I'm learning to drive at the moment, and I was trying to explain what I do to my driving instructor. And she just went, "It just sounds awful. Like, why would I come to that?"
He said that to you? She,
yeah. Well, she said, like, you need to get better at, like, explaining. You need to get better at selling your work, which is true. I think there's something about, like, trying to... And maybe this is something that everyone has, but I do think it's a dyspraxic thing where, like, in order to, like, keep talking and give a narrative that makes sense, I can't always be trusted to tell the truth.
Can I just ask you one other thing with making performance? That never feels like... do you ever feel anxious about that, or like worried about what you're going to do next, or does it all just flow out of you like no problem?
No way. No, definitely not. I think it's more the anxiety is always that like it doesn't flow out of me by any means. Like really not. But there's something about the stress of that is that like a good thing will come along and I won't be able to take advantage of it. Like, and that might just be like an idea that comes into my head, or it might be that someone says, come and do a residency on this mountain, or it might be like, here's an award or of money, whatever it is. The anxiety is much more like that I won't be able to do it when the opportunity arises. That's the concern, that like other things get in the way. Like I was like, no, I'm ready to make something now. I've got something, the material conditions or the idea or the like gig or whatever it is. I've got that thing in place, and I can't like, to use that horrible phrase, like lean into it. Is the kind of is the thing I worry about. I don't feel like it feels so different. Yeah, not because I'm in any way confident that anything comes, and not because I'm in any way confident that when things do come that they're going to be any good. But I sort of don't really mind so much if they're not good, because they're mine. Like, and I have agency over that. That's what it is. It's like this, and I can always tell myself and other people, like, you don't like this because you're ableist, or like because like you're like.
Right. Okay, but you can always just fall back on you don't like it because you're ableist.
Now. Or like, or like you don't like this, well, fuck you,
But does it feel okay to say, do you believe that? Or does that feel like you're just saying that because you want to make yourself feel better about having done something shit? feel
No,
really
that's great.
bad asking that question.
But that's like, I mean, that's the thing. That's the, you know, this is the great tragedy of the neurodivergent thing is like, you have to like take, or you know, not just neurodiversity for lots of things, of course, but I don't really know whether things are any good or not. I can't trust other people because they've sometimes got some stupid barometer that I don't understand about what makes things good or not. And I can't trust myself because I don't know whether I'm being lazy or whether I'm being like so busy with trying to work out what the fuck's going on that I can't produce anything. Like I really don't know the difference. And so this idea of like, I do think that's, or whether I'm being like arrogant or cocky or like taking up space and not putting much work in, all that stuff. Like, I think there's something for me about like, don't really, all you can do is create narratives. And the narrative is like, well, if you don't like it, you're ableist. It's like, I think it's a valid one. I think that like so much work of teaching is going like, how do you recognize your own barometer and what, and the limits of your own kind of barometer for measuring quality. And so I you know, I'm really, for me, it's really important that there is an inbuilt skepticism about taken for granted forms, taken for granted like aesthetics, taken for granted value systems. And if I don't see that in the work, either accidentally or on purpose, then I'm like less interested in it. And if I had a name for that, and I would reluctantly call it live art, although I appreciate that I'll probably get myself in trouble for that, that's more important to me than thinking about like, if I was going to start to like have measurements, like this talked about here, the measurement would not be like good quality or bad quality or like lazy or hardworking. It would be like, is it doing these things? I feel that as a dyspraxic, I'm lucky because I get to do those things accidentally. Like that skepticism is just it's not even skepticism, it's like not getting it. So me not getting how it should work and me being able to fall back on that produces a certain kind of work that I would, and lots of people would probably tell me not, this isn't good, I would call like live art, because like I think that skepticism is like inbuilt and it's accidental and it's caught up with who I am. Yeah, I don't know, like, yeah.
I'm now like very conscious of the fact that like I'm wondering if all the time now whether you're lying or not.
Yeah, that's not good.
Just like
I'm thinking out loud. That's what I'm doing. I'm thinking out loud. I'm thinking out loud, and sometimes what comes out as I'm saying it, I'm going like, "This is not what you think."
Okay.
And so it's not like intentional. Like lying is like intentional. It's more like going like, I'm saying this thing. Is this the thing? No, this isn't the thing. This is a terrible thing to say. And it's just like,
I feel like I need to listen back to what you said and then we'll have to do a third follow-up because I don't think I can respond and feel like I understood.
I think it'll only get worse.
I think I don't understand what you just said. And I need to listen back to what it was to try to ask a question that might clarify.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Yeah. I'm trying to write about it at the moment. That's what it is.
You are.
About like what being neurotransgressive is and why live art is inherently neurotransgressive. That's basically it.
Well, it just reminds me of something like Oozing Gloop said in the interview I did with them. They said something like, sometimes I look at artwork by someone with autism and I love it. And then I show it to someone who's like not neurodivergent. And they're just like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And so it was, so they were talking about like having to kind of figure out, you know, what was interesting and pleasing for them, and then somehow cater it to a wider audience, I guess. I don't know. I may be putting words into their mouth now. But like, do you have that sense of like, I like this thing because I'm dyspraxic, but someone who isn't won't get it? or might not. I don't know. Do you have a sense of?
Yes. I think that like dyspraxia and other factors, like all sorts of things that come together. I think it's more about what I don't like, or what I find difficult to understand why so much attention is given to certain things. I think it took me a long time to understand that lots of people approach difficult art, whatever that is, like a kind of cryptic crossword where they need to work out what it means. Like this kind of like, in a way that it feels to me like giving things validity or like legitimacy through like going away and thinking about what it meant. Like that, I find that really hard to understand. And that is the value system. Like, because there's so many things that people, I think, really have maybe like Gloop was saying, although I think that would have a hard time being in the room with it, but then would like later on be able to go like, oh no, I get it now. But it's like, there's just something like satisfying.
You prefer something more immediate, like.
Yeah, but I don't think it's about the work. Like, I think, because, there can be just something like lovely and weird and about being in the room with, if I think about being at Steakhouse Live, being at Arts Admin, about being in a space with someone who is perhaps like, I don't know, building a wall and then deconstructing the wall over the time of 9 hours. I don't think anyone's done that. Maybe they haven't. But like, I don't feel any need to think about that. And I love it. And I love being in the space with it. And I'm so pleased that it's happening. And I'm having a time that
I know
is like,
a piece like that.
Yeah. And and I find it affirmative, and I find it good for my mental health. And not that, I find it good for my sense of who I am. I find it like, I feel it makes total sense to me that my work could be adjacent to this. Even though even though the sensibility of it is so different. And that's enough. Like, that's totally enough for me. Like, the idea that
doesn't Ursula Martinez do a piece where
possibly
she builds a wall?
Yeah. I'm just, and so I
thought
find
of another one beside that too.
I guess like I find one of the things that worries me about academia is that those kinds of ways of engaging with work are dismissed, or basically we get people that don't like the stuff, and then we go like, here's how you learn to like it, like which is, I'm not saying this is bad, I'm saying I find it difficult to understand. I think that's a dyspraxic thing. I think like that sounds like really hard work. Like, I'm having such a lovely time in this space with this piece. It makes sense to me in a way that I would never feel like I needed to explain to anyone. I don't need to write a book about. I don't need to write a journal article about. Don't need to like write a blurb about. It's just clear that this is fucking worth being around and doing. That feels dyspraxic, I imagine, because it's about the pleasure of being in that space and the obviousness of it, the obviousness of its value to me. But then I couldn't explain that. I find it difficult to explain that to someone without shifting it to like,
right.
Oh yeah, it's a really good like deconstruction of like, or like, oh, this is about like stop and search, or like, oh, this is about like, this is, whatever, this is like a Lacanian deconstruction of like blah blah blah, or whatever. Like, I find that really, I find that like, and I don't understand why. So this is not a value judgment. There's room for everything, and I like it all. But like I for a long time, I really, my inability to tell you what happened to my performance is quite affirmative. Like, my inability to like go like, this is what it is, and to constantly be telling you about it and constantly going like, that's not what it is. Like there are people.
I was about to say, I feel like we've come full circle. With like I started out saying, explain, put it into words. And like, basically saying to me why that's
my,
so
my
hard.
struggle to, I feel like it might not sound like it, but my internal struggle with that is like simultaneously like hard and like, embarrassing, and also like affirmative. Like, oh yeah, I must be doing something right, because I can't quite. Every time I say what it is, I feel like it's a betrayal of what it is.
We probably should stop because I'm wary of having to edit all this.
Oh, God.
I'm going to stop recording, though. But before we stop recording, we need to record some kind of, like, goodbye, right? How do we...
That's brilliant.
Thank you so much for answering my questions, Daniel. It's been lovely speaking to
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from Daniel, Oliver, and I. It's been really fascinating to think about this question of criteria. It's one that plagues me every time I have to do a critique with students, or even when I think about my own practice. You know, how does one judge art? It's a big question. The importance of criticality or versus aesthetic quality, you know, those kinds of questions really interest me. And I think the way it intersects with the question of neurodiversity and disability and accessibility issues is super interesting. And it's a conversation I hope to continue with the likes of Aaron Williamson and Dolly Sen, who I plan to ask to be on the podcast. Fingers crossed they'll say yes. Putting that out there into the ether. And so the piece that Daniel talks about, the board game piece, is currently touring the UK. So if you'd like to experience that, and I hope that this interview has helped to entice your interest, it certainly has done so for me. I'm definitely planning to attend one of these upcoming performances. He's showing a short version of the piece at Ducky this Saturday night at the RVT. That's this Saturday, the 30th of April. Then the full fat performance will be at Clay in Leeds on Friday, the 6th of May. That's next Friday. Then going to Cambridge Junction in Cambridge on Friday, the 13th of May. And finally to Colchester Art Centre on the 18th of May. So hopefully you can catch one of those performances. All the details are in the show notes. Check it out.
Next time on Multiple O's.
Next time on Multiple O's, I'll be sharing my interview with the queer working class disabled artist and writer Jet Moon. We discuss Moon's varied practice, including live performance, anti-austerity activism, sex work, and facilitating writing workshops for survivors. So that's something to look forward to next time on Multiple O's.
Multiple O's. Next time on Multiple O's.
Until then, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show in whatever way you can. Don't forget to unconditionally accept yourself, others, and your life, because we're all just fallible human beings.